Yes, that's right. Over the next 12 days, I'm going to be eating just over 1,100 calories every day. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Danielle. I am a personal trainer, an online coach, and a nutritionist. And I help women all over the world reach their health and fitness goals. Now, you might be thinking, is this not an unhealthy thing to do? And the answer is, it depends. Like most things in life, it's how you do them. And with an aggressive deficit, because the calorie deficit is so large, you're not doing this for a long period of time, 1 to 3 weeks. And there are things that you must be doing in order to make sure that we maintain muscle mass. And that is making sure you're hitting your protein target, and also make sure that you're resistance training minimum twice a week, ideally more than that. We also want to make sure that we're getting enough fiber into our diet, which means that this diet is pretty much basically protein and veggies and some fruit. And this is also not an appropriate tool for individuals that do a lot of cardio. You need to strip back your cardio, so I'm definitely stripping mine back, and any cardio that will be happening will be very low intensity. And lastly, whilst this is a great tool to use, still I recommend that people practice learning to live. Okay, and what this means is you have some structure and some way of eating that helps you manage your weight mostly. And what I mean by that is, I'm not dieting now because I gained 5 kilos in the last month. I'm dieting now because I gained 4.5 kilos over the last 3 to 4 months because of life. So yes, it's an extreme aggressive diet, but I'm not doing it because of extreme eating. Okay, there is a difference there. This is life just generally happening, and I'm using an aggressive method to drop the body fat. So if you are somebody that still has aggressive or extreme tendencies with your eating, I recommend you work on that first. And the way you do that is what we call learning to live, trying to create some meal structure that works for you, improving the quality of your diet so that you're eating more healthful foods. And if you do have some level of binging tendencies, working on that. Because if you don't work on these things, you will lose the body fat, but then you'll go straight back to the behaviors that you had before. So this is a tool that absolutely works, but you need to work on your other stuff for this tool to be helpful in the long run. Otherwise, it's just going to contribute to your yo-yo dieting. So this is my current body composition, and I know you might be thinking, Danielle, you don't need to lose weight. And I agree. I actually think I look great. But there are moments when I put my clothes on and they feel a bit tighter. And you're like, Danielle, just go buy new clothes. I don't want to go buy a whole new wardrobe. And the way I look at this is, if you've been on holiday or you've had a couple of months spending a bit of money and you sit down and do your finances and you're like, ooh, gonna stretching myself a little bit thin here. And if I don't carry on, I'm going to put myself into debt. That's how I kind of like to look at body fat levels. If I don't do something about it now, I will end up in a place where I will need to do something about it. Because that is just, for me, it's my human nature. I'm not one of these people that forgets to eat. There's a spectrum of people. At one end, you've got people that can apparently just eat anything and they never gain weight. And at the other end, people who just look at food and gain weight. I am definitely up towards this. And I have quite a high drive to eat. Okay. And I have to manage it. Okay. And I'm not going to be apologetic for it. It just is who I am. And I've become more active, I've put good habits in place, but still I am subject to my humanness. And if I don't do something about it, my body fat level, I just trim it off now, then it leaves me in a much better place. And, for another 6 to 9 months, I'll be in a good place. Obviously, it depends what's happening, summer, Christmas, but that's what happens to most people. Most people experience these big holidays, Christmas, summer, where they gain a bit of weight and they don't do anything about it. And then in time, they end up in a place where they are carrying much higher levels of body fat than they wanted to. Anyway, I've gone off on a massive tangent. So here I am. Again, I thought I'd lose a bit of muscle mass with all my running and the hybrid training, but it seems to be okay. My upper body has been great because obviously you don't run with your arms. The thickness around my waist is the bit that I tend to hyper focus on, especially because I'm not hugely busted, big boobed. Mm-mm. So yeah, there's a little insight into why, and I'll be talking about how I'm going to be doing this. Let's quickly touch on why would I do an aggressive deficit over a small or moderate deficit. And the honest answer is I don't like restricting my food intake. It sucks. And But I learned a lot. So prior to these aggressive deficits, the way I would have dieted would have been in a small to moderate calorie deficit, which would be like 200 to 300 calorie deficit. And I encourage myself to be more active and eat more protein and eat more fiber. I spent a longer period of time putting good habits in place whilst losing fat very, very slowly. And I have to say that did serve me well in terms of getting these good habits in place. But the other way of doing it is learn to live without dieting and then diet and then learn to live and diet. And you just continuously do that and learn how to do these two different things. Like there's pros and cons to both of them. But you could make an argument that a con of doing long term dieting, if you're not consistent with resistance training, if you're not consistent with protein, and you're in a calorie deficit for a long period of time, you could actually lose more muscle mass. And I have found that I have maintained better muscle mass doing this aggressive calorie deficit. But the research actually shows that with aggressive diets, people tend to, first of all, lose the fat quicker and actually sustain it for longer afterwards. Yes, there is a period of regain, but compared to those with moderate calorie deficits, the regain isn't any faster with an aggressive calorie deficit. So there's no difference necessarily in the two. And the reason people regain body fat after dieting is because of their human nature. It's not that dieting doesn't work. Losing fat works, calorie deficits work, but people haven't nailed the learning to live, or just their human nature or their genetics, their drive to eat just means that they eat more afterwards and they bring it back, which is why the learning to live is such an important part of this. So to recap, the reason why I like aggressive calorie deficits is because I can get in and get out, and I don't have a huge amount of body fat to lose. Now, if you're an individual that had much higher levels of body fat, then the way you could do this is short periods of 1, 2, 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks is a nice sweet spot. And then you go either into a learn to live, or also known as a maintenance phase, which guess what gets you practicing the maintenance phase and the learning to live. Or you could do a refeed, which I'm going to talk about more in the coming weeks because I will be doing a refeed at some point. So let's talk about, how do I actually create this calorie deficit? So I have a regular meal pattern of eating 4 meals a day. And that usually contributes to like 2,300, 2,500 calories. Then consider I have the weekend, which I tend to be much more flexible with. And what I do basically when I go into this aggressive deficit is where I normally have toast and tea in this meal one, I take the toast away and I just have tea. I then have overnight oats, which is an absolute staple, and I get a huge amount on my fiber intake from this meal. And then basically for meals 3 and 4, these are basically protein and veggies with a little bit of fat. And I just use that meal pattern. So I keep a cup of tea for breakfast. Overnight oats is the same for every day, and I actually try to do it for 6 days of the week. And then lunch, I'll give myself 2 options. So what I've planned for this time round is a chopped salad, high protein, high fiber chopped salad, and then some roasted veg with chicken. And then dinner is, we're sticking to our usual meals where, let's say we normally have fajitas. Instead of having it with a wrap, I have it with lettuce boats. Have our chili, instead of having it with rice, I'm going to have it with steamed cauliflower. When we have our butter chicken, instead of having it with rice or potato, whatever we have it with, we're going to have it with grilled eggplant. So basically I'm swapping out these carb sources, and I take this pattern and I'm going to repeat it for 2 weeks. And I'm only going to do this for 12 days, which is actually the amount of time that I do most of mine for, because for some reason, I've always seemed to have an event on that day 13, and the event this time around is my 40th birthday, which, to be honest, we're just going out for dinner and having a few drinks. So after that I'll probably just drop back down into a moderate calorie deficit. So rather than aiming for 1,100 calories, I'll maybe aim for 1,500 or 1,600, because that 300 or 400 calorie increase each day actually feels like a huge amount of food. And so gradually over time, I just allow my calories to come back up to maintenance, which they will do within a week or two. If you have made it all the way to the end of this video, you deserve a medal. There was a lot of talking going on. It's my first vlog. What can I say? If you have any questions, pop them down in the comments, or any feedback for me. If it was too talky, if you enjoyed it, whatever, any criticism, put it in the bottom. That's the only way I'm going to get better. The next few videos will be me covering day 1, day 2, etc. So I'll see you there. Bye-bye.